Hey, thank you so much for joining. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast, we're super stoked to continue our series called Tapas with Jesus. Of course, we have to say that carefully with great enunciation, because if you didn't enunciate that well, you might get in some hot water. But we think about tapas. Tapas is like a Spanish meal of small plates or appetizers. And I described last week as similar to dim sum, what they have in Hong Kong. And it's fun because instead of having one or a couple of main flavors, you have these little plates of all kinds of different flavors and textures, and it's a mix. And so I want us to consider having some of these small but powerful, pungent conversations with Jesus. And I think it's really fun because you get a whole variety, not just one giant kind of deep dive on one subject. So today we're looking at a really interesting conversation, and this is from Luke 8, verses 43 to 48. And it's an interesting conversation, an interesting, pungent, because this is when Jesus is walking to heal a religious leader's son. And on his way, he's surrounded by a huge crowd of people. They're pushing in and squeezing and pressing him. And a woman, if you've heard this story, a woman with an issue of blood. It says that she had been bleeding for 12 continuous years, and she wasn't getting any better. And she was kind of at her wit's end. It was hopeless. And she pressed through the crowd and touched the hem of his garment, because she said to herself, if I touch the hem of his garment, I'll be made well. So it's interesting because legally, according to Jewish legal boundaries and the parameters, she wasn't supposed to be out in public because she was unclean. And so you didn't want to touch her because then her uncleanness would rub off on you and you'd be unclean. That was kind of the mentality of the day and kind of the Jewish legal boundaries, limits, It had to do with religious propriety and all that stuff too. So she kind of pushed the envelope, took a huge risk, and was at the end of her rope and did something extremely risky that if she got caught, it would have been bad news for her. And so I like this conversation. It's a little short, brief conversation, because I think that it relates to us in the world that we live in lots of different ways. I think for some of us watching, listening, we're kind of at the end of our rope. Maybe you've had some financial struggles and you're just barely making it, not even hardly making it, really. You run out of money before you run out of month, or maybe you've had some health issues and you just kind of feel yourself hanging by a thread, and some days you don't even feel, you just feel like you're just plummeting. And it's like we go through seasons and experiences in our lives where we're at the end of our rope and we don't know what to do. We're kind of this borderline hopeless. But I think this is a really important tapas, pungent conversation, because this woman pressed through, took the risk at great personal cost to herself to touch Jesus. And I think one of the key things for us to consider in this Tapas conversation series is that we keep Jesus front and center in the crosshairs. And for myself, I know when I go through difficult times, hard seasons, it can be very easy for me to get my eyes on the difficulty, the hardship, the struggle, the uncertainty, the absence of finances or health deficiencies. But really, I would say one of the key things for this Tapas conversation is keeping Jesus front and center in your crosshairs. And she really pushed forward with great personal risk and touched the hem of his garment. And I appreciate what she did because it was her faith. It wasn't Jesus stepping out and meeting her. He didn't even know she was in the crowd, supposedly. Of course, you're like, he knows everything. True. But when she presses forward and touches the hem of his garment, he stops. Jesus stops the whole thing, all the crowd, and he's like, who touched me? And his disciples are like, the better question, Jesus, is who did not touch you? Because the whole crowd is pressing in and touching you. Who's not touching you would be easier to answer than who is, because everybody is touching you. And I find this interesting because when Jesus noticed and she came to his attention, I really like what he did. In verse 47, it says that she came trembling, and fell down before him, and declared in the presence of everyone the reason why she had touched him, and how she had been immediately healed. And it was her initiation, her persistence. It was her keeping the crosshairs of Jesus in the crosshairs. And at the same time, Jesus speaks to her and says, "Woman, your faith has made you well." And I appreciate when Jesus, and here's the Tapas piece of this, when Jesus brings her into public awareness, she's not only healed physically, but also any kind of social exclusion, because she should have been excluded socially because of all of her uncleanness, all of her sickness, ailment. But Jesus not only healed her physically, she pressed through with her faith, but also he restored her socially. Because now that she's 100% whole and well, she can mingle, interact, and have regular conversations, daily life that she wasn't able to really maintain for so many years because of her illness. And I appreciate that in this quick Tapas conversation, there's two pieces to it with Jesus. One is physical healing, and two is social reconciliation. And I would say to us today that when we are around Jesus, it's not just that we get one thing from Jesus, but Jesus has, I don't want to say a menu, but Jesus has a wide array of benefits, of upgrades for our lives. Not just physical healing, but also helping us in our social life, also helping us with our mental awareness, also helping us with our emotional state of being. Jesus has a whole spectrum of things that when we press in and say, okay, and tapas, remember, it's lots of little plates, that Jesus has all kinds of provisions, sweet provisions, savory, pungent, bittersweet. Jesus can absolutely step in and bring a lot of flavor to your life that you've never experienced before, and really redeem you in ways that you desperately need redemption. Not just in specific, like crisis urgent, but in a whole spectrum. So thank you so much for subscribing. Of course, you want to hit the notification bell right there. Keep you posted on content. And then let me ask you this question. Answer this for me here. Leave it in the comments. In what area of your life would you like Jesus to heal you or to give you an upgrade? Name one area, and you're like, well, the whole thing. Okay, I get it, the whole thing, fine. However, pick the most important one to you and just tell me what that is. And of course, we're gonna have our fantastic joke, which is this. I really like this joke. You may like it, you may not, but I've started telling people the benefits of dried grapes because I am all about raising awareness. Dried grapes, raisin awareness. I know, that was so good. So next week will be way better. Thanks again.